My portion of the talk today is really how important it is to work as liability attorneys with workers' compensation attorneys when there is a third-party liability claim and a companion workers' compensation claim. Because as workers' compensation attorneys, we've been dealing with Medicare for a long time. It's always a consideration in any of our cases, and we do certain things in our cases that may impact your liability case. Medicare is a secondary payer to a workers' compensation plan. I don't think there's any question about that. In workers' compensation cases, usually the employers provide the medical treatment to the injured worker. It's expected, and they've already paid for the medical treatment, or they will. The problem arises when the individual goes to a medical provider and for whatever reason workers' compensation doesn't pay for the medical expenses, and then the medical treatment is placed under Medicare. And as a result of that, we've already heard about conditional payments today, but that's one of the first things that we look at in a workers' compensation case to determine if Medicare has made any conditional payments in a workers' compensation case. And you've heard various people explain how you contact Medicare, how you get that information. Once you get that information, you need to look at it to verify that all of the charges there that Medicare is seeking reimbursement for is actually related to your work-related injury. And then obviously they've already discussed ways to negotiate with Medicare to bring down the conditional payment lien. Aside from getting the conditional payment information, one of the biggest and most important aspects of a workers' compensation claim is the future medical expenses or treatment that would be provided to the injured worker at the conclusion of a case. Future medical expenses can't be shifted to Medicare, and it's their expectation that they be provided by the insurance carrier or the employer. Now, Medicare considers they have a designation for two types of settlements in workers' compensation cases involving past or future medical payments. When a settlement includes compensation for past medicals incurred prior to the settlement date, they call it a workers' compensation compromise case. When you discuss medicals paid into the future after the settlement date, they call that a workers' compensation commutation case. And sometimes our workers' comp cases can contain both aspects of paying for past medical expenses and making provisions for paying for future medical expenses. Medicare's interests are protected in a workers' compensation case when the case is settled as long as future medicals remain open. And what I mean by that is that the employer or the insurance carrier agrees to pay any future medical expenses that may arise, and therefore Medicare won't be billed. The problem is when the medical is not open, and I can tell you in New Jersey there's normally two types of settlements. One would be where there would be no issue as to the fact that it's a work-related accident, the issue is compensable, the employer agrees that they're responsible for the liability for the medical treatment as well as any permanency that may arise. And in that case, there's no question, there's no problem with Medicare. The problem is if you have a case that is denied by the workers' compensation carrier, or there's an issue as to liability or causal relationship, and therefore the workers' compensation carrier won't agree to pay for future medicals. Because Medicare wants to protect the future medicals and the fact that they don't want to pay for them, they've developed a mechanism called the Workers' Compensation Medicare Set-Aside Agreement, which is basically a mechanism that they've developed where all the parties in the workers' compensation case would determine how much Medicare could be expected to reasonably pay out into the future to the employee for his or her injury or condition. And it's based on the employee's current medical condition. A report has to be submitted to CMS, which gives a clear picture of the claimant's injury from the date of the injury, present and future medical care, which is projected out according to national treatment guidelines, and then future medical cost is also then projected out and priced over the claimant's lifetime. Sometimes they'll use state fee schedules or usual and customary fee schedules depending on what your state follows. But again, a set-aside is not necessary when the medicals remain open in a case where the employer is going to provide the medical treatment. It's only when there's a question of no one providing future medical treatment. You have to submit your workers' compensation Medicare set-aside to Medicare for their approval in the workers' compensation case.